Well, welcome back to the Point of Order podcast, an inside look at California politics in the state legislature. I'm your host, Assemblyman Josh Hoover, and we have a really exciting cast of characters joining us on the podcast today. Two returning guests. We've got Alex Vassar from the California State Library and Chris Micheli, advocate. I'll let you guys introduce yourself because you do many things. You write textbooks, you do many different things. And then we have a first-time guest, Brian Ebbert, here with us today. Brian, thanks so much. Why don't we just start with this? Let's just go around, remind people who you guys are. We'll start with Brian, since you're the first-time guest. These guys have actually been crazy enough to join me before and deal with this. So, yeah, Brian, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Great. Thanks for having me on. I have worked for the Assembly for 35 years. Technically, I retired about 7 months ago, but came back as a retired annuitant. But basically, I've been parliamentarian to the Speaker, served in different roles in the Chief Clerk's office as Assistant Chief Clerk and Parliamentarian, and the Speaker's Floor Director for a number of years. So 35 years of working on the Assembly floor, which also included writing books on Capitol history and legislative process. So, parliamentarian type stuff, parliamentary procedure, legislative process, and history is my field.
I love it, Brian. Thanks so much for being with us. Alex, remind. It's been a while since you've been on the podcast.
It has,
probably a couple years.
Yeah, so it's been a couple years. So I'm still where I have been for a while. Work at the state library. Have previously been a governor's appointee. Worked for the Assembly. Worked for the Senate. Made some questionable life choices along the way, and fell into the legislative history trap. And it's just legislators are such interesting people, and so
not all
love
of us.
being here. Oh, so many.
So is it and then let's do Chris. Go ahead, and Chris, remind us who you are. I know you've been a multi-time guest, so thanks for coming back.
Yes, well, thanks for having me back. It's fun that we have a new trivia question to add to the next edition. The first time three guests on your
Have
on
ever
your
been
podcast.
on the Point of Order podcast. Exactly.
Yeah. Not as long as Brian's been around, just over 30 years now, primarily as a lobbyist. In the last dozen years, I've been an adjunct at McGeorge, my alma mater law school, and like Brian and Alex as well, are both published authors in different areas. So, yeah.
No, I appreciate you guys all coming on, and we're here to talk today. So this is a very special episode. First of all, I'm dressed very casually today because we are on summer recess. The legislature is out.
We took a cue from you, no ties.
And so we figured we'd have a little more fun in July than we normally do. We usually talk about legislative business, but I think you guys have really put together such a cool book here called the California Capitol Cocktail Trivia Book. We're going to dive into this today and discuss it. I read it last night, and it's honestly a really fun read. So
good.
Really excited that you guys were able to come on. Some really interesting trivia in here.
Are you having trouble falling asleep, or what prompted this?
I actually was watching it or reading it while I watched a scary movie with my daughter. And she was but I was kind of like perusing through it while we were watching this. Anyway, while I was seeing
See, my kids would want me 100% focused on the movie with them. But
yeah, she's 14 now. Okay. She's not as worried about it as she used to be.
Love it.
But just to read a little bit about the book here, this book is a lively and engaging collection of little-known facts, anecdotes, and curiosities drawn from the rich history of California state government, known for their collective expertise, this group of people here, and deep understanding of Capitol's inner workings. These authors blend humor, history, and insider knowledge to create this book that entertains and informs. Honestly, you can get it on Amazon.
Yep.
Yeah,
right on
Amazon. We'll put the link in the show notes. So we're going to dive into this today. I want to get into some of my favorites that I found in here that I highlighted. I want to hear some of your favorites. But before we do, is anyone doing anything fun while the legislature is away? What do you guys get to do when we go away for a month?
Well, the last few years we've done summer family vacations, primarily to Europe, but this year we're doing the big family trip in December to visit relatives in Italy.
Okay, very cool.
So we're hanging around here and just prepping for the last month of session, unfortunately, but
very cool.
A little casual.
Did you celebrate America 250? Did you get some fireworks or?
100%. We always spend it at my brother-in-law's house in Arden Park and had a wonderful time as always. It was capped off yesterday. I was invited by Mr. Vassar here to be one of the readers of the Declaration of Independence that was taking place around the country on July 8th. So
That's pretty cool.
great celebration, not only the 250th of our nation, but of course the 175th for California.
Absolutely. That's awesome. Good stuff. Anyone else doing anything fun?
So I didn't do a lot for the summer. Kind of Chris is doing stuff later in the year. I did stuff earlier in the year. In March and April, went on a road trip. Finished visiting all 50 states. So I had 12 to do, and so we did this epic road trip from flew into Montana and drove to Maine, which is questionable. That's like I said, questionable life choices. That was crazy. So yeah, so I've now been to all 50 states, and that was kind of the big accomplishment for the year. And so yeah, it's been.
So they actually let you travel in March and April now that you're not in the legislature anymore?
When you my work is not tied to anything in the legislature, and so it's I can.
I remember that was completely off limits when I
absolutely.
was in.
Yeah, it was like you may not, and then now it's like, oh no, I'll see you guys in a few weeks.
Oh, that's
Query,
great.
have you seen the 50 state capitals?
I have not seen the 50 state capitals. Some state capitals are in the middle of nowhere, and it was like Maine.
Not like Sacramento.
No, Sacramento is
in the middle of the
front and
epicenter.
center. Yes,
It's right in between San Francisco and Tahoe, as we're always told.
It's always when you go to most state capitals and you say, oh, I work near California state capital, and they're like Los Angeles, and you go nope, and they go San Francisco.
Benicia.
You go
Oh, no, not
and then
Benicia
they're like Santa Barbara, and you're like, oh no, keep going, San Diego. And it's like no, Sacramento. It's like,
Sacramento.
oh, I've heard of that.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Any plans?
I've been doing something which I always dread, which is moving. I just bought a house, so
wow,
I'm
okay.
doing the
Congrats.
home renovation and all that. So it's good to get away from all that construction to be here, so I can
That's
relax
good.
and not
All right.
get covered by dust or anything. So
Yeah, that's great.
But yeah, I'm getting some remodeling ideas here as well. So
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. That's great. No, that's a big summer project there.
Yeah, and for summer recess, there was a time decades ago where you could actually take a break, but now I find that now's our time to take a break, so we have to prepare for the reconvening of session. So there's all of that, getting ready for end of session push for August. So.
That really is true. I think it's sort of a misnomer that just because we're on recess, there's nothing going on. It's like, no, there's a lot of prep going on.
Oh yeah,
Getting prepared for August and all that good stuff. We got a final push, obviously, in August for end of session, one more month. For the year, and then we're back to our districts for the rest of the year, so it'll be good. I'm headed to Pismo Beach. I think I've already shared that on a past podcast.
Very nice.
Taking the kids down there for our family vacation in a couple weeks, so that should be fun. Speaking of not being able to work in March and April,
Yes.
I have to ask you a question, and only you and Chris can answer this question.
Okay.
But big story in the Sacramento Bee today. So on July 1st, there was essentially, I want to say AB1 went into effect, which allows the legislative staff to unionize in California. Now, I really just want to ask it more from a process standpoint, not really commentary on the bill itself, but how do you think this changes the institution? What impact do you think this could have? I mean, you guys have both been around for so long in terms of, you've seen all the different sort of things going on in the legislature. So just curious what your thoughts are.
Well, first, when you were referring to July 1, I thought you were going to talk about the return to office for state workers.
We can talk
3
about
days
that
a
too.
week. I didn't notice a big uptick on the drive into
You
downtown
didn't?
on Highway
Okay.
50.
So
I was very
actually
nervous.
didn't either. I drove in that day.
Yes.
And I didn't notice that either. I also rode light rail in once this
Okay.
month. And I did notice quite a few people on the train.
Okay.
So I don't know if that
I did
was
notice
related.
1,000 protesters in the state capitol in purple shirts.
Yes.
That I definitely
That was
not only saw
noticeable.
but heard. We'll see. I don't know. I always advocated for just applying the provisions of the labor code like overtime to legislative employees, maybe as
Yeah.
a better alternative to unionization. But we'll see how it works out. I know that they've done quite a bit of work in the two rules committees for the Assembly and Senate in terms of equalizing pay and having bands of,
That is true, yeah.
and I don't know, I've heard mixed results with that.
Yeah.
Definitely there's been some issue, I guess, with, for example, people who have lots of significant life experience but not legislative and being treated differently. In other words, if you had 10 years of, say, legal experience,
Right.
but zero legislative,
Right.
you
That
could
is
be
a
treated
challenge,
just
yeah.
as a college graduate, if you will, as opposed to somebody with the 10 years experience. So we'll see how that works. I guess
Yeah.
I'm always curious what will happen when your staff, for example, briefs you on a bill and then at the end says, and by the way, boss, my union is opposed to this bill, or my union supports it.
That's a fair question.
know. We'll
It's
see
a
how
fair
that works
question.
out.
Yeah. No, it'll be interesting to see how it
Don't
shakes
forget,
out.
there's lots of staff who are excluded, like chiefs of staff,
That's
for
true.
example.
It does not
So it's
include
not all-
chiefs. Managerial. Yeah, for
Exactly.
sure. So,
I don't know.
any thoughts?
So yeah, the one thing that I thought was really interesting as we kind of came into this new era in the legislature was the history of unions in the legislature. Because they were specifically banned when the ability to unionize public employees was initially passed. There was actually not a joke, but when Artie Samish, who was a master lobbyist, ran his world, he had a suite over in the Senator Hotel where he would offer beverages and other things to entertain the soul. And to get in, you had to have, it was a gold card, and it was the Legislators Union. So it was a fake group. Wasn't an actual union, but it was the Legislators Union. When you had your membership card, you could get into this suite and
That's
get
really funny.
food and everything your heart would desire. All
right.
Yeah.
Oh, that's actually a pretty wild story. That's a really good transition.
That was
Alex.
one of those. Man.
That's
we
a
got
really-
there before
that-
we got over here.
That is
This is-
a cocktail trivia
That is
item.
a cocktail
Yes.
trivia. This is why we're here, guys. So great transition. Let's dive into the book. Again, for people that want to check it out, it's super quick read, less than 100 pages. California Capital Cocktail Trivia book. Something just super fun little read. But let's just start with this question. How did the book come to be? I really want to know from each of your guys' perspective, where did this idea even come from?
Came from him.
Yeah, I pitched it. So over the years, as I've taught class at McGeorge and also a legislative drafting course at UC Davis, I give students what I always refer to as cocktail trivia. Little ins and outs of the legislative process, legislative drafting, et cetera. So I thought one of these days I'll have to put stuff together, and I thought, who better than these two gentlemen?
Absolutely, yeah.
Brian and I have worked together for years, and obviously as the chief parliamentarian, among other roles, plus his historical insights, it's well beyond just process, but also folklore from the state capitol and other things. And of course, Alex has long been the go-to person of historical reference, legislators in particular. One of his books is on all the legislators who have served in the California state legislature. So I reached out and said, would you be interested in doing a cocktail trivia book? And thankfully they both jumped at it.
That's great.
I always assumed we were the second two that he asked. So, that's good too.
Nope, the only two.
So when Chris came to you guys, what were your thoughts?
I thought this is a great opportunity to get into trouble because it's interesting writing a trivia book because you don't end up citing sources. There's a lot of stuff when you're writing a regular book. You're citing sources. You're being very, very careful. And with trivia, because it's so light, it's there is a danger to treating serious topics a little too lightly. And so I think that was one of those like, okay, this will be a stretch, but I think it worked out well.
See, Brian was our fact checker and our conscience about what we could or couldn't include. Yes.
Yeah, some editorial functions there. But, for all the years I've worked on the assembly floor, one of the advantages of that was sitting there for 35 years, hearing thousands and thousands of tours by the professional tour guides of the state parks, as well as, just legislators and senior staff coming through and telling their stories. And that piqued my interest. So that got me involved in researching some of the lore that was out there and finding out what is fact or fiction and coming up with those trivial facts.
That's pretty cool, actually.
And it got to the point where I actually have a lecture where I call it the unwritten history of the California legislature. All these things that you hear about and see similar to this that goes into those things.
Wow.
Oh, was there a murder in the Capitol? Was there a speakeasy in the Capitol? Those kinds of questions.
That's awesome.
And I include that in my lecture. And so when we're asked to do trivia, it's like, oh yeah, got a million of those. We already probably have another edition ready to go.
Yes,
and
we
then
do.
A dark edition down the road of all the ones that couldn't be included in the first couple.
Oh my gosh. It's California Capital Trivia After Dark. Yeah.
After dark.
Can I give you an example, for instance?
Yeah.
In terms
Tell
of,
me.
like, sitting there for many years, hearing these stories from different tour guides of the origins of the Lincoln portrait in the Assembly Chamber.
Yeah.
And for years, I heard a lot of the tour guides say, "Oh, it was donated by the federal government to the state capitol." Excuse me. And then I said, that doesn't sound right to me.
Yeah.
I mean, the federal government isn't in the business of donating art to anybody.
Yeah,
that I'm
no,
aware of.
for sure.
So I dug through the journals of the two houses, as well as historic
Yeah.
newspaper databases, and shared the story here in this trivia book about the origins of that painting, which, if you want me to,
Yeah, no, please share. I mean, this is
famous California artist William Cogswell. It was his dying wish to have his portraits hung at the state capitol of presidents. One of his portraits is hanging in the White House today of Abraham Lincoln. The other one is hanging in the Assembly Chamber today. So it was his dying wish in the early 1900s for that to happen.
Wow.
It coincided with a renovation of the Capitol in 1906 to 1909, which also coincided with a celebration of Lincoln's legacy. It was his 100th birthday.
Wow, that's amazing.
And 50th anniversary of his assassination in 1905, I believe it was, right? So the Assembly took possession of the painting that the family gave, actually sold to the Assembly for a couple $1,000s.
wow. Back then, that was a lot of money.
Yeah. And also a painting of President McKinley, who had been recently assassinated. And then the legislature didn't pay for the painting. So
Oh, I did read that in the book.
yeah, so it's in there. And so the press began writing stories about a woman, the Lady in Black, who would come to floor sessions to shame the legislature into paying the bill for her father's portraits that were sold to the Assembly and never paid for. So you'll see a statue.
That's pretty cool.
In 1909, just single line item appropriating $1,700 for two paintings to be hung in the Capitol.
It's unbelievable.
So it took a few years for the family to get paid, but the
We
Cogswell
did pay
family
our bill
did.
eventually.
Eventually, yeah, through shame.
That's pretty amazing. Wow, that's incredible. All right, so I got to ask.
Wait, wasn't she like a lobbyist?
Yeah, but she was technically, probably one of the early
At least for
female
the
lobbyists
family,
in the state of
yes, right?
California. Yeah, Louise Hovey was her name. H-O-V-E-Y.
That's so amazing. Yeah, that's cool. I got to ask an uncomfortable question. Brian doesn't need to answer this one if he doesn't want to. What didn't make the book, guys? What got edited out? What do you? Anything exciting?
You guys don't recall?
I just can't seem to recall anything. I think did John Yule?
Yeah, I don't think that's in there.
So John Yule was an Assembly speaker who
Got ahead of himself.
got ahead of himself. See, he was well, boy, what's the polite way to say this? He was after he left the legislature, he was working a gold mine.
Yeah.
He got paid in dollar bills, greenbacks, and gold dust, and he was last seen going into a house of ill repute in Placerville, and his I believe his headless body was found a week later.
Wow.
And so it's a speaker. And so it was one of those like, that's a little.
It's a little
Well,
gruesome.
because they called it a house of ill repute back in the day, and it's like we have different words for that now. But that's less of a kid's book if we talk about that. And so it was like, let's let John.
In
Yule
the era
rest.
of political violence, we do not want to talk about a decapitated.
I will say,
legislator.
there is a shocking amount of murder in this book.
Sorry.
Not expecting.
But we kept the beheadings out.
Yeah, you kept
yeah.
out the beheadings. It was just regular murder, so that's good.
So there actually was a murder in the California State Capitol.
Multiple, yeah. There was the Stone Bell stabbing was, I can't remember if that was, no, that was actually, that was back when the state capitol was where the Sacramento County Jail is now. So
Yeah,
not
it was at the courthouse at
our,
the time. Yeah.
our state capitol.
7th and J.
And then there was the murder, was it 1920s, 27, 29, 28?
I believe it was 1929.
29, yeah. Lobbyist, no offense. And a legislative staffer from the chief clerk's office, no offense.
Actually, Secretary
I
of State.
do.
Secretary of the
I do
Senate.
remember reading this one too. That was
Yeah.
a crazy story.
It was,
Right?
yep.
So murder suicide,
Yep.
right?
Murder-suicide.
So
Murder
does someone
suicide.
want to tell that story for the listeners?
So
storyteller.
Oh my goodness!
Alex is the
so there was
storyteller.
a lobbyist who I believe was in his mid-30s.
No, he was 60.
Oh, was he? Oh, 60s. All right.
Oh, wow.
Okay,
That
so
makes
we've
it
got
worse.
Fact check. I thought I'm the one telling the story. And Brent's
I was
nope,
gonna say,
nope.
Will.
He was older, and she was younger. She was in her 20s.
She was 35, I believe.
35.
so.
Just this one, fact check. And
So this is exactly what happened with the book.
just like and so
Alex and I wrote things, and then Brian would correct
he
it.
was interested in having a relationship. She was not.
Yeah.
He kept pressing the issue. Without objection, like to bring this up for reconsideration. And she said no, and it got to the point where she was going to quit her job and move back out of Sacramento, and he tracked her down and he shot her in the Capitol, and then he killed himself. And
It's unbelievable.
And it was one of those, and as we always say, it was a mere 80 years later, we got metal detectors at the state capitol. So
But I would like to point out also, this was during Prohibition, so
Right.
and he was drunk.
and he was drunk.
And so that drew federal attention. I mean, it's a big deal
Wow.
having
Wow.
a murder in a state capitol,
Oh,
but the
yeah.
fact liquor was involved as well, that brought in federal attention to, I think they called it a rum probe of the capitol, and that's when you saw like the well disappear as
well,
well.
yes.
And that's
Okay, so let's get into that, because that one was next on my list. So you guys start the book off with sort of like 25 of the hottest questions or whatever, and then after these, I just highlighted a couple. We're not gonna go through all 25, but then I'll also ask you some of your favorites. But that was number 7 here that I highlighted. Well, the first one was the painting, so thank you for that story. But what was the name of the unauthorized speakeasy in the basement of the Capitol? And this was actually a thing. What how long was this around? And was it during Prohibition or?
Yes. So what I found through historic newspaper databases mostly, as well as journals, because they would reference the well as well, is from the 1870s, which is when the Capitol was completed, essentially, 1869. So from the 1870s through at least the 1920s, an illegal, unauthorized bar, and I'd say even some ill repute going on there, operated in the corner of the basement of the Capitol.
Wow.
And the reason I say journals cite this is because there were floor sessions happening where they couldn't get enough members, like on the Senate floor, to vote. So the presiding officer would have to order the sergeant at arms to go to the well to drag the members out.
That's unbelievable. That sounds like a pretty normal problem around here.
Well, they were in caucus, right?
Yes.
Well, and there were even drawings of like the passageway to this, like a dark, eerie kind of hidden passageway to go to this lounge that then turned into a bar, and then they would bring some individuals from old Sacramento down to the Capitol to entertain
Holy cow.
the all-male legislature of the time. And so
That's incredible.
when I heard when they were considering names for restaurants at the new Capitol, the State House restaurant is there. I heard one of the names that was considered was the Well.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Yeah, probably not a good idea, given the background. But yeah, it's
Make it, I don't know.
to me, what was interesting also was that back then the Secretary of State was in charge of the state capitol complex.
Okay.
So whenever the newspapers would write stories about this scandalous, illegal bar operating basement of the Capitol, the legislature would pass these resolutions demanding that the Secretary of State shut down, this operation, and as if they had nothing to do with it. So that was always kind of interesting.
That's
way
pretty
of
funny,
passing
though.
the
So the
buck.
media would write about it. It was obviously a poorly kept secret,
So it would get shut down for a few years and then quietly reopen. But the murder, that I didn't see any more references after that murder and the feds getting involved with the investigation of.
That's fascinating. Yeah.
I would love to hear on the assembly floor today that the presiding officer direct the chief sergeant at arms to go collect members from the well, bring them to the floor.
It'd be hilarious. I just want to hear it just for fun. Let's
Right,
just try
exactly,
it out.
right.
So, start the rumor it's back. I thought the secret DMV was scandalous, but this is a whole nother level
that
of
was nothing.
scandal, right?
That was out of convenience
Exactly.
for the legislators and their staff and all of that. I don't know.
Yeah, which I found out recently that's gone. So
Yes,
I
it
didn't
is,
even know that was gone.
unfortunately.
I just learned that recently. So I got asked this in an interview the other day, and then the question was here in this trivia book. But I was in an interview on a piece of legislation we're putting forward on RTO, on the return to office.
Yeah.
and this bill is moving through the legislative process pretty smoothly, but the governor clearly doesn't support it. And so the reporter asked me, do you think the legislature would override the governor's veto on this legislation if we passed it? I said, it's been many decades. It's actually been almost 5 decades now. 1980 was the last time that the legislature overrode a governor's veto. And quarter century or something before that, it was like only 5 times that it happened.
Very rare. Yeah, so we had
It's unbelievable.
The 2 governors who had the most were Rolfe and Colbert Olson. I think Governor Rolfe had 17 veto overrides. He just got on the wrong side. Colbert Olson was a former state senator who became governor, and then he had probably the worst relationship. It was probably the low point in the relationship between the legislature and a governor. And so he had a number, oh my goodness, and on really weird ones as well.
Yeah.
One of my favorites was legislature passed a bill that set requirements for how long you had to age whiskey for it to be sold as whiskey in California. And Olson, who was born in Utah, perhaps not a fan, vetoed it, and then the legislature said, no, we like this one, we want our whiskey,
Okay,
and so
all right.
they overturned it, and it was one of those, it's a really weird list to look at, but yeah, since we had a series of overrides in 1979, 1980,
yeah.
last one was in 1980,
That's pretty
it's
interesting.
been a while.
So I got to ask you guys, why do you think that is? Why does this never get used? Obviously we know governor politics and all that stuff, but curious because we went through periods, right, since 1980 where we had Republican, legislature, we had Democrat legislatures, right? It hasn't always been like sort of a one-sided thing. So it's interesting to me.
I remember one of my early years as a lobbyist in the mid or late 90s. Governor Wilson was the governor at the time, and Republicans in the state Senate were threatening to join with Democrats. No side obviously had 2/3 to start an override effort. I don't even remember what the bill was, but I distinctly remember the governor's chief, the leg secretary, and others coming up to the Senate and lobbying them, and ultimately it didn't happen, but it was viewed as a genuine threat. I don't know, I have to tell you that every fall, after the governor has finished his signing period, the number one question from the Capitol Press Corps is, Chris, these 5 bills passed near unanimously, why aren't they taking up a veto override? And I say, you should reach out to the legislature and ask them.
The reality is the governor has so much leverage, right?
Yeah.
And even if
these
you
negotiations, so.
get the 2/3 in the House of Origin, the odds of getting it in the second house are even
pretty slim,
slimmer.
yeah.
Who's going to expend their political capital on something that you can just reintroduce the bill the next session?
That's a fair point,
And give it another shot.
Next session, next governor, just like
Well,
wait them out.
I remember almost 8 years ago when Governor Newsom first took office in that first year, there was, I'm going to say 90-ish bills that got down to Governor Newsom's desk that had been vetoed, some more than once, by Governor Brown.
Oh, wow.
And he probably signed about 2/3 of them, give or take. I have the historical record,
that's
the exact
interesting.
numbers, but that was that first year. There was a significant effort to revisit a lot of bills that Jerry Brown had vetoed.
Wow, that's really interesting. Yeah.
And I would say one other thing that's interesting if you look at the history of veto overrides is you actually are more likely to see members of a party challenging a governor of their own party than you are in the other directions.
That's interesting. Yeah, that kind of makes sense.
Which is one of those things that most folks outside the Capitol, folks in the Capitol figure this out pretty quick, but frequently, not you, you have no enemies, but some people who have enemies, if you ask a legislator and they're being very, very honest, is there another legislator that you really hate? Like, is there someone you really strongly dislike? And they answer honestly, it's almost always a member of their own party. Very rarely are they like, well, there's one member currently that a lot of people name. But usually if it's a very strong personal, it's generally your own party and serving from an area very close to where you are.
Interesting.
So it's good that you have Patterson on so that he doesn't. Yeah.
Yeah, Joe Patterson, by the way, made the book here as well. I noticed. Let's see. He had a quote in here somewhere.
He did, yes.
I'll have to find. Oh, right here. Yesterday went exactly how I did not plan.
That is him.
I thought that was great that you guys put that in here. But yes, regular guest on the podcast. Also, another podcast guest quoted in this book. One-time podcast guest was Mike Gatto is in here as well.
Yeah.
And that was a really good one too. He came on the pod a couple times.
Well, I think there was an effort, Brian in particular tried to include a number of modern day because we spent so much time with more historical figures, so it was good to weave a few
Right.
of recent memory.
Totally,
into it,
absolutely.
yeah.
No, I love this actually Mike Gatto quote. I'm just going to read it because it's hilarious.
Yeah.
Thou shalt not speak ill of a bill in the corridors. You might turn a corner and find the author on the other side. And that is very true.
Yep. That happens.
Got to be careful. You got to go to the well for those conversations, right?
Someone's listening there too, though. Speaking of which,
It's Ashley Zavala.
The wiretapping incident. That's in the book. Oh, with the Governor Olson.
Oh, Governor Olson, that wiretapping incident. Yes.
I think that's one of those interesting pieces of trivia that a lot of people don't know about. And there you have a Democratic governor actually eavesdropping in on a Democratic speaker in 1940.
That's fascinating.
1940. Yeah. And that did not go. And I think also, with the governor being a former legislator, he had been a Democratic state senator. He becomes governor, and then his worst enemy as governor is the Assembly Speaker, who's also Democrat.
Wow, that's amazing. And
so he had, and this is one of my favorite ironies in all of California politics. So he had the DMV wiretap the Assembly Speaker's hotel bedroom at the Senator Hotel, and it blew up. It got big. Olson lost re-election, and then Earl Warren gets in as the new governor, and he appoints Speaker Gordon Garland, whose hotel room had been wiretapped, as the new director of the DMV. And so it's like there are values to all appointments, but it's one of those that's one of the most beautiful appointments ever. Was
did he lose because he wiretapped the phone, or what he just lost?
He did stuff to upset almost everybody pretty universally, and so
did that wiretap lead to anything, or was
it was just going to be used to
hold
embarrass
over him?
Yeah, and there was a select committee investigation of it. And
wow.
Yeah,
I didn't know the DMV had these kinds
I was
of
just
capabilities.
See, that was my question.
Let's
what's
secret
the
DMV office.
DMV
Who
doing
can we get
wiretapping?
to do this? If I had to pick a department, I don't know. Okay, you guys got to tell me the story. So, this will be the last one I read from this, and then we'll dive into some of the other tidbits you guys want to bring up. But the question number 16 here: what lobbyist triggered passage of the 1950 lobby control law? Now, that was obviously one of the early regulations of lobbying activity. But tell us the story of the lobbyists that brought that about, because I think that is pretty interesting.
Yeah, so anyone working in California politics should read up about Arthur H. Samish, or Artie Samish, who was one of the most notorious lobbyists in California history, very powerful. He got his start working in the Assembly Chief Clerk's office, actually. He came out of San Francisco, and as a young staffer in the legislature, he worked in the engrossing and enrolling department and at the Assembly desk, which is where they put together all the documents and on the Assembly floor. He learned the ins and outs of the process, how bills are delivered and signatures gathered and all those things, and how bills are edited or amended, and who does that work. And then he went out and started lobbying. His clients were alcohol, tobacco, gambling, became the wealthiest lobbyist in the state. And if you read his memoirs called The Secret Boss of California, he talks about how he created a system called select and elect, where he would go and find somebody, get them elected to the legislature, and then he'd essentially own them. And this is before the days of the FPPC, campaign finance laws. There were
and a part-time legislature.
And it was a part-time legislature, yeah. So you had legislators that had, it was really a struggle for them to come up here and give up any kind of income at home. to work up here, and they had no regular staff. So they were really relying on the lobbying corps and the executive branch.
right.
So Artie Samish had a lot of power, and he abused it, and he was very boastful about his practices. As Alex mentioned, he operated what was referred to as Samish Alley across the street from the Capitol, the Senator Hotel, which is a whole third floor suites with steak and alcohol and other things to entertain. And so the national news magazine Collier's Weekly did a piece on him in 1949 called "The Secret Boss of California," and these weekly news magazines at the time were very big in the United States for the advent of even television, really. And so it was a big national story. And in this story,
What was on the cover?
in the magazine, there was a photo of Artie Samish sitting there with a dummy on his lap, a ventriloquist dummy. And he called it Mr. Legislature.
That's what really did him in.
Yeah, and he called himself the governor of the legislature.
Wow.
Governor Earl Warren is quoted in the article as saying that, on matters important to Mr. Samish's clients, he is more powerful than the governor, than himself. So, that, of course, was very scandalous. And so investigations were launched. The governor called the legislature into special session December of 1949 to investigate this and to, create some lobbying laws, because there were none really. And then kind of a watered-down lobbying law was enacted. Samish avoided all penalties until the feds got involved, and like any good villain, he got nabbed on income tax evasion.
Okay.
It took a couple years, but he ended up in federal prison for a couple of years. And then when he got out, he eventually wrote his memoirs, Secret Boss of California. He loved the moniker so much from that
used it for
scandalous
his
story.
book. That's
that
amazing.
It's like, the Secret Boss of California. So it's a very interesting read. And he talks about that lobbyist union card in that book as well.
That's so funny.
But I can tell you, when I got my start at the Capitol, 1991, as a young intern working in the engrossing and enrolling department, his legacy was still there.
Wow.
We're talking, this is 30 years or more after he had been in prison, 40 years. And there were gates, no public allowed beyond this point, because one of his tactics was going into that engrossing and enrolling department and editing bills, changing zeros or ones and moving decimal points and what have you, or delaying the delivery of a bill, which he talks about in his book. And I actually found in the Anonymous collection references in the 1930s, there was an oil extraction tax that was being proposed, and Samish wanted it killed. So there was some kind of midnight deadline. So he had some staffer on his. He called him his Gestapo, his like staff Gestapo of clerks and secretaries and what have you that worked in the Capitol that he had on his side payroll. And he just said, deliver that bill after midnight. That'll kill it, right? And guess what? That tax did not get to the other house in time, so it did not become law. And those stories just kept building. That was in the 1930s, but he remained in power until the early 1950s. And people like him is what led to eventually Secretary of State Jerry Brown in the early 1970s pushing Proposition 9, which was the Political Reform Act of 1974, which we all know and love and fill out forms every year. All that was actually tied way back to the Artie Samish days and his scandals.
Wow, that's fascinating. Yeah.
And that's in there.
Yep.
Except not as long.
All in here, absolutely. What are some of your guys' other favorite pieces from this book? I have some of mine highlighted I can share as we go through, but it's, we also want to leave something for the listeners to buy the book, but there's some cool stuff in here. I was reading about
since I mainly contributed on the process side, I enjoyed most the capital figures, if you will, some of whom we've obviously been discussing. So, because I myself learned quite a bit in reading and editing it and about the areas that I didn't know about. So those are more my favorite ones, the topics that I'm less familiar with, frankly.
Yeah.
As someone that lived through the 1995-96 speakership battle where we had
Was that 4 speakers?
4 speakers elected in 12 months.
Jeez.
And the Assembly having no speaker for a month and a half.
Wow.
That was insane. And there were some tidbits in there about that. Like, one trivia question being how many speakers were elected during that 2-year session. And, for context for listeners, that was a landslide Republican election, 1994,
Yes.
November
Yes.
1994. Assembly Democrats lost 8 seats unexpectedly, which brought the Republican caucus to 41 Republicans technically elected.
Yeah.
Technically.
Technically.
Till someone
One
flipped.
switched, yes.
Yeah. One member ended up flipping to independent just prior to the organizational session, and they ended up voting for the Democrat Willie Brown as speaker, so that deadlocked the Assembly 40-40. And you can't operate 40-40. And we weren't the only state that year that
Wow,
had
that's
that
amazing.
problem.
Yeah.
Michigan also had that problem. But the deadlock legislature is just something that I don't think either party likes. It's like, give us some kind of
Nobody knows what to do with that.
The longtime legislative counsel, Brian Gregory, was first consulted in his office, and then he actually spent several hours on the assembly floor conferring with Mr. Brown, Willie Brown, and Mr. Brulte, the Republican leader. It was a fascinating day. I'll never forget it. I was right outside the chambers where the lobbyists were on the old 3rd floor. And when it came time, when they vote, it's a roll call. Even though they have electronic voting in the assembly, for the vote of speaker, they walk through each person. And I'll never forget, because Paul Horcher said, "Brown," and slammed his hand or his fist on his assembly desk, and everybody was shocked. And what does that mean? What does that mean?
And some Democrats began cheering because they'd flipped a Republican.
knew, yes.
Yeah, that was going to create the deadlock.
Now, see, that was also an interesting time, because what ultimately happened was the all-powerful Ways and Means Committee that was chaired by John Vasconcellos, who was a Willie Brown lieutenant, among other things. Ways and Means had both the budget and appropriations. In the Senate, they were 2 separate committees. So the Republicans and the Democrats decided we're going to split up all the committees. So half of the assembly committees were chaired by Republicans, the other by Democrats. They finally dismantled Ways and Means and established appropriations, which Chuck Puchigian, a Republican, who went on to the Senate and the Court of Appeal, was the chair of appropriations, and Vasconcellos kept budget. So he was the Democratic chair of the budget committee, but they split. They had a Republican and Democrat chief administrative officer of the assembly, the leading staff position. I mean, it was a fascinating year.
Yeah, it was stressful to say the least.
Well, the chief clerk at the time spent some time in the hospital, in fact, right?
He had some tough decisions to make that
Yes,
day.
sir.
I didn't realize there was once a time there were 75 Republicans in the Assembly and 37 in the Senate.
Yeah.
That's pretty.
It was 1860s.
That was right
1880s.
before the Depression.
Yep.
Times have
Unbelievable.
changed.
Times have definitely
I think
changed.
like 1910 or something
Yeah,
around
they
there,
had-
1920s.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
That was also a
fascinating.
time where cross-filing was happening. So you
Yeah.
would actually have
Yeah.
members that were like Republican socialists or Republican Democrats. So your main affiliation that you're registered as,
Yeah.
as a
Sure.
Hoover Republican, you could also win the primaries of other parties.
That's wild. Yeah.
And have all those monikers next to your name. So you would have like a Republican, Democrat, Socialist,
Yeah.
Prohibitionist as
That's
a member.
that's fascinating.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah, that's wild.
Well, so if you applied that today to the top 2, you could have both slots in the top 2.
Yeah, there you go.
We actually have, I think it's 4 or 5 candidates in 2026
Yes.
did not face opponent. Like nobody
is
filed
true.
against them, and then nobody filed against them. I think we ended up with 8, and then there were 2 or 3 that you actually had somebody file as a write-in, and all you have to do is get 1 or 2 votes in the top 2, and you get through. So Matt Haney didn't have anybody file against him, but somebody filed, Assemblyman Haney, had somebody file against him as a write-in. We don't actually even know, I think at this point, how many votes that person has gotten, but we know they're going to make it onto the ballot. So it's an interesting world.
I mean, just to highlight some of the murder that you guys talk about in this
And that's
book.
Alex's
That's-
specialty.
We're always
Yeah,
back
I
to the
think
murders in the
This is
Capitol.
always like Alex's specialty,
man.
but like these were 3 of the craziest ones. So Assemblyman Agustin
Harassed thing.
Harasti,
Yeah.
yeah, was the first California state legislator to be eaten by alligators.
Yeah.
As far as we know.
It's a really
you
small
say.
caucus, yeah, as far as we know.
Hopefully last.
I'm hoping that doesn't happen to anyone else. Assemblyman Henry Ford died after accidentally shooting himself when climbing onto his horse.
Yeah, you shouldn't. Yeah, I've got to be careful with that.
And then a lot of duels as well.
A lot of duels, yeah.
Daniel Showalter and Charles Piercy. This was they disagreed over a floor vote and challenged him to a duel.
At the Speaker's
Assembly
house.
Speaker's house hosted this duel. And then Piercy was killed, and Showalter fled California to join the Confederate Army.
He did, yeah, and then he.
I mean, where do you get this stuff?
Well, and then that was one of those, he wanders off, he joins the Confederate Army, it doesn't go good, so he leaves and he goes to Mexico after the war. And so he settled in Mazatlan, Mexico, and
I've been to Mazatlan. It's a nice
so-
place.
so-
He opened a little Taco
so he had a bar, and he got in a bar fight, and he got lockjaw, and he died of lockjaw in Mazatlan a few years after the Civil War. And it's I think it's my recollections could be wrong. Is somebody hit him in the face with a bar stool?
Yeah.
Like, that's not cordial caucus qualifications. But yeah, it was crazy times.
That is crazy times. Also, one of my favorites here, the first session of the legislature is known to have had the nickname the Legislature of 1,000 Drinks.
Yeah.
Because they frequently adjourned to retire to the bar.
So at that time, the legislature elected U.S. senators, and there was one person in particular who really wanted to be a U.S. senator, and so he thought if we adjourn and I buy drinks for everybody every day, eventually they'll elect me as a U.S. senator. And no, it's a fun fact: you do not get elected to the U.S. Senate based on that. So,
There was one shooting that I came across in my research. I don't think we included it in this one, so this is a
Second
preview
edition.
for the next. But where there was a floor vote in the, I believe it was 1870s, that had to deal with the payment of legislative staff, and this one member had voted against it. And then at the local saloon down in Old Sac, I think it was called the Golden
Eagle.
Yeah, a lot of drama went down at the Golden Eagle. So this enrolling clerk with the legislature confronted this lawmaker for voting against this pay increase, and the lawmaker didn't like what he's hearing, so shot the staffer in the finger, and then that staffer, to get back, ran for office and got elected to the assembly.
yeah,
Wow.
Yep.
That's fascinating.
Circle of life.
So buying drinks won't get you elected, but getting shot in the finger may.
Maybe.
It could.
Maybe. It
could.
depends on the district.
Okay.
Once in a lifetime.
Yeah.
Love this one, right? I mean, when the governor leaves, obviously, the succession, so it's lieutenant governor, and then what is it, Senate?
Senate
Pro tem or
Speaker.
So 1964, Senate President Pro Tem Hugh Burns, from Fresno, by the way,
Yeah.
my hometown, became acting governor for 8 hours, quickly issued proclamation declaring it Governor's Day, and gave the staff the day off to party with him at Posey's, which obviously used to be a bar. Now as we just know as the parking garage over there. But that's hilarious.
Did he do a 21-gun salute?
No, I don't think so. I didn't read about that.
yeah.
But when he was during that 8-hour time period, he also ordered the CHP, because he was acting governor,
Right.
to move Hiram Johnson's historic desk into his personal office in Fresno.
Fresno.
He was president of a savings and loan.
Yep.
They had to cut the wall out, put the desk in his
Oh my
office
God.
for his
That was a
8-hour
very
stint.
active
And
8
I
hours.
found photos of him
Yeah.
partying at Posey's.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, with his a sign that said "His Honor, the Governor." But speaking of Hugh Burns, he was had a reputation for liking the drink, so much so that Governor Reagan ironically appointed Burns after Burns left the legislature. He was pro tem of the Senate for many years.
Yeah.
So Governor Reagan knew about Burns' propensity to drink and appointed him as the head of alcohol beverage
ABC?
control.
Oh my gosh.
Well, that's great.
Yeah.
I'm sure he ran that
So
department.
that was one of the more epic appointments, I think.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah.
It's generally good to have personal experience before taking off a manager.
you gotta understand what
taking
you're
on
regulating.
managerial. Right, exactly.
You got to understand what you're
That's
regulating.
one of the first things you talked about today was, you got folks coming to the legislature, and am I going to be respected for my 10 years of experience as an attorney? It's like, oh, well,
Exactly.
yeah. Burns would track down members. Like he would walk into offices. He had designated
Yeah.
drinkers. Like
Yeah.
he would walk into an office and he'd be like, which one of you is going to come back to my office and drink with me? and they'd be like, "You baby staffer," and the staffer would go and drink until they were not able to function, and then they would go back to their office, and Burns would go out and find someone else to drink with until they were incapacitated, and then he'd go out, and it was just like. And so I actually spoke with the chief of staff for a state senator from San Jose, and he was talking about it. He said, I came in early. I started my day at 6 a.m. because I knew Burns would be in our office by 9 to 10. Jeez. And so I would not be, I was a designated, my boss did not like to drink, and so they would throw me under the bus, and I'd be drinking with Burns until I couldn't operate. And so I had to get in there early, and I was like, oh, that's...
to do your actual work.
That's pretty wild.
Oh, my
That's
God.
fascinating, man. Wow. Governor Schwarzenegger holds the record for total numbers of special sessions called single two-year session. What was it, 8? Yeah.
I'll never forget the
2009.
one where he called us into special session like right before Christmas, and the legislature. I mean, this Constitution's silent on how it's done, but
Right.
I mean, we haven't had a legislature refuse to convene, so you just got to get enough members there.
Right.
Again, I think this was a week of Christmas. We convened, organized a session, and then shut it down, sine die, because the legislature gets to
box.
control like the adjournment.
Yeah, you don't have to pass anything. You don't have to-
So
that's
8 of
wild,
those.
though. So right before Christmas.
Yep.
Yeah.
What was the special session on? What was it supposed to be?
Budget. That was
Okay.
the 2008, 2009, the whole market crash.
Yep.
So
Okay.
It eventually led to Prop 58 and the fiscal emergency special session that's still in the Constitution. But I think the most interesting cocktail trivia is the color issue. You want to describe that?
Yeah. So although most of us are using tablets and computers, what have you, these days, there are still printed publications for each session. So the regular session of the legislature is both houses print their documents on newsprint style. You see an assembly file or Senate file or histories and what have you, journals. And then when you get in a special session, the only thing to delineate them, at the top it'll say first extraordinary session or second extraordinary session. But back in the day, we used to use different colored ink. Well, that's very expensive, and for the state printer to have to hose down these printing presses and all this. So we switched in the 1990s to different colored paper instead, which is much cheaper. And so you could have, like in that 8 special sessions running in the same 2-year session, you would have 8 different colors. Well, you have newsprint and then 8 different
Green and
colors.
blue and-
So blue is first extraordinary, green is second extraordinary, and then I start getting foggy.
There's
but
so many.
there
of
was
them. I read them. Yeah.
Yellow, and
I know
buff.
pink is the 9th. I remember that one.
Yeah. The Assembly didn't like pink because of it's more associated with Senate colors.
Oh, right.
Oh, but
right,
green
yeah,
is
it's
fine.
pinkish.
Green is fine
perfect,
for
yes.
yes.
This is a good one because I remember participating in this as a staffer. But a longtime superstition held by staff when we had, obviously the Columbus and Queen Isabella statue. If you landed a penny in Queen Isabella's crown, which sat in the lower rotunda, you would throw it from the upper rotunda. You'd have all your bills passed at the end of session. What I didn't realize is that there was a benefit to the pre-1982 pennies because they were fully copper.
Yep.
And they didn't
They
bounce,
don't bounce as much. Yeah, the zinc. So kids.
How many times
kids,
did you try?
Fair number. But yeah, it's one of those like in future generations, like kids. So we used to have a form of currency called the penny.
Yeah.
You
now
might
we
not
do.
be familiar with it, but they were brown. They were copper. And yeah, so they had after the early 1980s, it was like 99% zinc, and so we had these.
Look at
It's
me.
probably a federal offense, actually, now that I'm thinking about it. But you could scratch a penny and you could pour Coca-Cola on it, and it would dissolve the inside.
Wow.
And it would just be an emptied out thing. But I'm pretty sure defacing. So I
Would never do this.
would never do that. I would never do that. And so definitely did not do
You
that
can't
many
anymore,
times.
anyway.
But yeah, so that just the old ones just didn't bounce as much.
I remember actually pretty vividly, it had to be pennies, right?
Yes. Yep.
And there was a year when I was there that someone threw a quarter or something, broke the finger of Queen Isabella, I think.
A page boy. Page boy.
Or was it the boy?
Yep.
Okay. It ended the practice.
Yes. Yep.
The sergeants did try to stop people from doing it, but when you were going
was
until
sort of harmless,
2 and
for a
3
while.
o'clock in the morning repeatedly, They let some things slide, but eventually it got shut down.
See, I was always stuck in session, so I could never go out there. I didn't even know this was a thing
Yes.
until
That's
finger
very
broke.
big.
I was
Yeah,
like,
you
what?
never
People are
got to
doing
have
that?
any of this
Yeah,
fun.
so now we know two of the culprits at least.
But that practice did end. I did not break the finger, but yeah,
Now,
that practice
for
did
me,
end.
when I was my first year or two at the Capitol, my statue story was sort of like bizarre. There was a protest. You remember the group Earth First?
Of course.
So they were protesting some legislation with the federal legislation about preserving some land, the North Coast, and so they actually got under the roof of the Capitol and rappelled down the sides and unfurled a huge banner that blocked the whole side of the Capitol. It was about the Headlands Forest.
Yeah.
And then protesters on the inside, one handcuffed himself to the legs or arms of the Queen Isabella statue, and then had like metal over the handcuffs and then taped. So then the state police couldn't easily remove him. So he was handcuffed to the statue. And meanwhile, down the corridor of the annex, which has now been torn down, but the governor's doors, which are the big double doors, a lady chained her neck around the doors so that you couldn't open the doors.
Without
and
suffocating
so all
her.
this is going on. CHP and state police are freaking out. All this stuff is going on in the Capitol, and so a big crowd forms in the first floor rotunda, watching, this guy, handcuffed to the statue, and then also a pair of protesters rappelled down the rotunda halfway and did another banner. So a lot of stuff going on, and so everyone's watching this like crazy, and then two naked ladies run through the middle with mud on their bodies as part of the protest, just to
Add a
create
little
more chaos.
excitement.
And that was one of my introductions to the legislature. I'm like, wow, this is an interesting place to
This
work.
is an interesting place.
There was when they rebooted the Star Trek and they started doing the movie series. There's one spot, I think it was Scotty goes, "This is so," what did he say? He said, "This is such a fun ship," or "This is such an interesting place," or something like that. And it's like, yeah, if that's what you come in and you're
That's
like,
how you describe
this
the
is amazing.
Bizarre. But going back to those days, I'm talking early 1990s. That's pre 9/11, all that. So the building security was non-existent. I mean, you
was
could
a
walk in
different-
any of those big double doors of the Capitol. You just walk in, no metal detectors. The only metal detectors they had at the time were the public galleries. And otherwise, it was a free-for-all. It was wasn't 9/11 that changed security. It was that truck accident, which is not accident, but purpose attack against the Capitol building.
Drove in the south side.
18-wheeler, I think 70 miles per hour into the side of the Capitol.
Wow. Yeah, I went to Boise's Capitol recently, and they don't have any metal detectors or anything, and I was like, this is so weird.
Well,
it's like, I don't,
Salt Lake is wide open.
Yeah, it was really interesting. I think my first year as an intern in the Capitol was the year that the controller didn't pay the legislature because they didn't pass the budget or something. And I just remember my boss at the time walking in, just celebrating, like, we didn't get paid. And he was so excited about it that everyone was complaining and like. And that was that. And then also those were the years. That first year, I think, was the year that of the scandals that aren't in this book. Which were a lot of the the scandals in the early 2010s, which were I remember as an intern looking around, like seeing the FBI running around and
3 Democratic state senators were.
And just going like, what have I gotten myself into in this place?
One of the common questions we get every year or two when maybe a member is misbehaving in one house is, when was the last time a member has been censured? And that time was 1982. And you know the story.
John G. Schmitz.
Senator John G. Schmitz, who was so
just pulls that out of his head.
far right-wing that
So far
John
right-wing.
Birch Society kicked him out, saying you're a little too far.
Interesting.
But
I'm not going to tell. No, I'm not going to tell that story. He made a disparaging comment. He made a disparaging comment
on letterhead.
on Senate letterhead about Gloria Allred and
a lot of other people.
And that was not appreciated.
Wow, that's amazing.
And so the Senate introduced a resolution printing his offensive statements, so it's officially for the record.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
formally
Wow.
censoring him.
That's
Yeah.
wild.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, I appreciate you so much. Definitely
you.
go get the book. This is great. The California Capitol Cocktail Trivia book. We'll put the Amazon link in the show notes. Any final thoughts before we let you go? Thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
Any final? All right. Love it. You guys make it really easy.
Yeah.
This is good. We will be returning to our regularly scheduled programming in August with Ali Macedo coming back on the podcast. In the meantime, you can follow us on socials at Point of Order Pod. Email ideas for the show to pointoforderpod@gmail.com. But you can also follow today's hosts on X, myself at Joshua_Hoover, Brian at Sac Greenbelt. I looked up. Is that still accurate? Chris Micheli at Chris Micheli. Pretty
Not
easy.
very original.
And then Alex Vassar on X at Alex C. Vassar. Guys, thank you so much for this. This is super fun, and really appreciate you bringing some comedy, some humor, some lightheartedness to this podcast, because sometimes we're too serious over here.
Thanks for having us on.
All right, guys, have a good one.